Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We all appreciate you guys jumping in, taking the time out. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and I'll introduce myself. So if you guys haven't joined in on any previous Guestpoint webinars, I'm Eli. Most would consider me maybe the face of Guestpoint, but really I'm just the customer success and technology manager. Alongside me, I'll just push the slide. Alongside me, I've got Oscar Bryant. So he's the senior account manager at SiteMinder. He's going to be running us through all the really interesting things with hotel trend data that SiteMinder's collected. So I'm really excited to see that. We also have Susie Faulkner as well, who's the COO at bookamotel.com.au, which is a really cool little platform catered around just booking here. Some more on that. And then we also have Lucy from the Tattlesall's Boutique Hotel Armadale. She'll be joining in on the discussion a little later on as well. So just to run you through our agenda real quick, our first point will be Oscar. He's going to run us through the hotel booking trends. Then we'll move to a discussion. And then after the discussion, we'll go on to a question and answer piece. So Oscar, feel free to take it away.
Excellent. Thanks for that warm introduction, Eli. And of course, let me just start by saying it's a pleasure to be here today to share some of these data points with the wider motel audience among the Guestpoint users and community. I think there's a couple of really interesting points when we look at this data that we're going to be sharing today. And one of the things that I find really interesting is the how. How do we collect this data? Where does it come from, and why is that important? So SiteMinder is in a really unique position where we have tens of thousands of properties who use the platform globally. And out of those tens of thousands of properties, there's always there's a count of which is now 130 that start either through an OTA or a booking engine or a corporate channel that passes through SiteMinder to get to a PMS. Now that happens 130 million times over the course of the last 2025. So that puts us in a really unique position where what we can do is look at the data, look at the reservations that were placed, and work out what they're telling us on a macro level. And that's something that we're going to be talking about today in a little bit more depth. But I think it says a lot about in terms of being able to take these big data sources and all this information that's passing through on any given day and then break it down and aggregate it into something that's very bite-sized and very easy to understand. And more importantly, the purpose of today was to make sure that what we have is going to be specifically relevant to properties in Australia, Guestpoint customers, keeping in mind their specific locations as well. So if we look at the top 12 channels from 2025, now this is Australia specific, and another great thing I want to say about this data is that it's hot off the press. We do release these publications on an annual basis, and they generally come out at the start of February. So this is about as fresh as it's going to be for anyone that's interested in how guests were booking in 2025. So if we look down the list, I think there's a couple of interesting points here that we want to focus on. Unsurprisingly, Booking.com and Expedia are the top two channels that obtain reservations amongst the Australian hotel network. But again, like a really encouraging fact is that despite the long host of other channels that there are, hotel websites still find a way to be highly competitive in and amongst this crowded marketplace. And we're really pleased that that's the case, because more and more we want properties who have a direct strategy to be winning in that format. As we look down the list on an Australian basis, another really interesting takeaway is the fact that we do have three corporate channels who are featuring here, being GDS Systems, CTM Sleep Space, and HRS Australasia. Hotel networks, obviously a very highly used channel, particularly in the motel community in regional Australia, which isn't necessarily on the top 12 list, but it does always feature quite highly. And then similarly down, we obviously, look at Qantas Hotels always features quite highly. Trip.com always features quite highly as well. In fact, have done so more so in recent years, along with Agoda. And we see that as a big reflection on the way that international travelers are from South Asia and North Asia are starting to come to Australia more and more, be that China, India, Singapore. These are very strong source markets for Australia, which is why, unsurprisingly, Agoda and Trip.com feature on this list. And the statistic at the bottom of the slide there as well also says, there is a split of total reservation check-ins being between domestic, obviously very heavy, 86%, but international is 13.65%. And year on year, we actually are seeing the share that international travelers have in Australia increasing. So I think that's a really encouraging sign when we think about our properties and who we're going to target and who we're going to, what sort of markets, what kind of travelers we want to attract to our hotels. Knowing that there is a rise in international travel and coming to Australia is a good sign and a good indication of where we should be pushing our room inventory. So we'll just go to the next slide now. Now, it's one thing that this data is so fresh and so new. It's another thing that we've been able to do exclusively for this webinar, and I'm very proud to announce this. This is a first for SiteMinder. As I said, we release these hotel booking trends every year, but this is for the first time we've actually broken this down to a state-by-state level. So what we've been able to do is just determine the top 12 lists for Queensland, South Australia, Victoria separately. And at the host of registrations we had for today, there was a very clear distinction between properties and their locations. I did see a lot of representation from a variety of states. So we're really excited to have this available to you today, and looking forward to sharing these data points with each of you separately after the call. Some of the key things that we've identified from each top 12 list for each state was that, firstly, there are at least 2 corporate channels in each state's list, CTM, GDS, hotel network, or HRS. So that's a really good indication that there is a huge drive for corporate travel and a big consideration for our rate strategies going forward. Airbnb featured in almost every state and territory, and actually finished quite highly in in Tasmania. It was 6th on the list, which was its highest ranking of any Australian state and territory. And obviously, to me, that says that a lot around how Tasmania is such a hot destination for inbound travel. But it's great to hear that hotels in Tasmania, where there is higher room inventory, compete quite heavily with the short-term rental market and those sort of vacation rental accommodation options. So we love seeing that Airbnb is a good feature there. A few other highlights across the state. So Luxury Escape had a very excellent representation. And again, I think that's a reflection of just how much Australians love to be tourists in their own country and travel domestically when it comes to holiday season. And again, Qantas Holiday had an excellent tour representation, particularly on the eastern seaboard between Queensland, Victoria, and New South Wales. So very much, well-considered channels when we're considering our distribution strategy. The last couple of points, obviously, South Australia and NT, only 2 states where we saw the channel tour plan feature, were obviously a wholesale travel management channel. So to me, that says a lot about, the sort of packages that are available there. It's not just about the accommodation, but also about the experiences that come with that outside of where you're staying. So yeah, really good to see tour plan seeing a lot of bookings in South Australia and NT. New South Wales and Victoria equally were the only channels where we saw Hostel World feature. So again, great indication of the the backpacker communities coming through New South Wales and Victoria. Obviously, there's still a very high demand for that. So great to see that feature in that list. And as I said earlier, direct booking has a podium rank in all states and territories, and that's just such a great indication of how effective our direct strategy is when it comes to trying to get guests to book with us directly. I think another important point is, of course, just because these channels aren't necessarily in the top 12 list doesn't mean they're not worth being on. Our recommendation is always as many channels as possible to give ourselves the best exposure. We'll talk about that a bit later in the panel discussion, but I think these insights are really worthy takeaways as far as considering what type of travelers we want to attract to our properties, what kind of guests, who and over what weeknights do we want to attract these travelers as well. The hosted channels always gives us great options for that, and helps diversify our customer base. So we'll just move to the next slide now. This is an indication of how the different channel categories have performed against each other last year based on our recent booking trends report. So very pleasingly to see direct bookings are well above the pack as far as average reservation price tag. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. I mean, first and foremost, we do love when we see properties who really put emphasis on their high ticket room types and ensure that they're only available in a direct capacity as well. Because we want to see hotels save their best experiences for guests who book direct. And so often those experiences are accompanied with added extras, which are much easier to sell through direct booking channels as well, which can lift the price of the booking or through added valued items. And if there are experiences at hand and a direct relationship a property can have with a guest, then often the minimum stay might be a little bit longer than average. And if people are staying for longer, then we obviously see higher booking values than expected. So that's why we're seeing a bit of a lift in the direct booking value based on our data. But outside of that, we are seeing an increase in the way in which GDS and corporate channels are also being optimized, compared to previous years gone by. So that's a great indication of how much more properties are starting to be a little bit more aggressive and adventurous with their rates to try to lock in their negotiated prices with their corporate channels, and ideally increase revenue through the weeknights as well. So yeah, there's a lot more takeaways here. Of course, we're very we're a bit nerdy when it comes to this data. We certainly love sharing it and looking at it and breaking it down in lots of different ways. So we will share at the close of the session today the link to SiteMinder's latest booking trends, and strongly recommend everyone to spend some time going through that and see if there's any key takeaways from you there, so that you can ideally apply to your own distribution strategies.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that, Oscar. That was really good. It's awesome to see that data. Really cool to see that direct bookings are up there with the big dogs. That's really impressive. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have Lucy on the line with us as well. She's from the Tattersalls Boutique Hotel in Armadale. So, Lucy, I'll hand over to you and you can give yourself a bit of an intro.
Okay, yes. My name is Lucy Radburn. I'm just one of the reception supervisors here at Tattersalls Hotel. Yeah, so our hotel was beautifully refurbished by the Cassidy family back in 2018. Into a beautiful Art Deco style hotel. We feature like a popular a la carte restaurant here in town, and we also do like live music out in our pizza garden outside. Yeah, it's definitely just like a true local landmark here in Armadale.
Awesome. So just so everyone's aware, Lucy is a Guestpoint and a SiteMinder user, so she's got the best of both worlds operating on the property, which is cool. Awesome to hear. All right, so I guess I will open up the floor. As you went through before, Oscar, that data is really insightful. I know that you said you guys have strategies around, getting that direct booking up so high. What do you think also drives direct bookings to be high? Would you say it's like Google Hotel Connections? Is it people just being more tech savvy in general? Or it could be people, having updated websites, better SEOs. What do you think is a big player to why we're seeing that so high up on the list?
So really good question, Eli. And I think first and foremost, this is a question that everyone really should be asking, right? Whilst we do have the hotel booking trend data to look at for some, some categorical thing, we also run reports that give us some intel around behavioural data as well. And about 1 in 5 guests will benchmark a property when they're researching it, having found it on an OTA, against the property's website. So if you're a guest and you're searching through properties in a certain location and you happen to find one, and more often than not, you're going to start your search on an OTA. And if 1 in 5 guests end up overflowing to the website, then that's again an opportunity for the hotel to really attempt to capture that direct booking, either with a competitive rate or a competitive package, or just a nice sort of easy, seamless experience. So our view is that the exposure on channels matters. It matters in a big way, because we don't just being on more channels is obviously great for any of the bookings that might come directly, but we also want people to be using the channels as a starting point when they are on their booking journey, so that we can pick up that overflow traffic as well. So our view is always list on more channels, utilize some of the ones that we mentioned on the call earlier today, because I believe some of them will be there, but some of them won't be, and there's still a host of them outside of that we haven't even mentioned today that could be worth looking at too. But we feel like the more that is done, the greater overflow of there will be to one's website, and ideally more direct engagements, more direct bookings.
Awesome, cool.
Yeah.
So based on everything that you showed us, how does this translate to what we're all seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I can jump in and have a comment on this one. Certainly from the motel perspective, it aligns really strongly. So there's demand definitely there, but it's a lot more fragmented. So guests are absolutely shopping across multiple platforms. They're not loyal to one booking platform in particular. We regularly see travellers, as Oscar said, they start with the OTA for discovery. They'll validate via Google reviews and obviously the property website before they decide. So we find the motels that perform best really stay visible across a much broader channel mix, and they keep their execution tight. So the accurate availability, consistent rates, and really clean content on their own platforms. So our key point is really that channel reliance is a risk. It's a balanced mix that will give them the stability when demand shifts.
Perfect. All right, so today, what does a well-running, high-performing tech look like, and how does this support sort of your everyday operations?
Yeah, I can answer that one. Yeah, so I suppose one of our challenge as a hotel was managing so many bookings across multiple platforms, and trying to keep our rates and availability updated everywhere. It was just, very time-consuming and just inefficient. So that's why we moved to an advanced distribution system like SiteMinder, and then integrated it with our Guestpoint as our property manager. This definitely saved us lots of time, just by being able to update our rates and availability across all our channels, and made bookings and check-ins much smoother. Just worked really well together.
Awesome. That also raises a point. Oscar's really big on connecting to a whole bunch of channels and actually utilizing the technology that you have, the access that you have, really well. So I don't know if you want to talk about it a bit more, Oscar, but you're always, when we're trying to connect SiteMinder customers, we want to update, give them as many rates as possible, connect them to many channels as possible, and just really utilize the technology that they have access to, instead of just connecting to, your booking.com, Expedia, and then that's it. So it's really opening yourself up to what you've got your hands on.
Yeah, absolutely, Eli. I mean, I think whenever you update a new technology platform, irrespective of what it is, I think we always have to be mindful of thinking about how we're going to update our operating procedures as well. Because when we have new solutions, we have to think about what's available in those solutions and what they will mean for us in the long tail. I mean, I think a classic example is so often, you know, we encourage, you know, the use of rate diversification, right? Rate plan diversification, and that's such a big thing in the hotel world, and something that we feel is very underutilized. I mean, what the experience of booking a flight, for example, these days, you know, you cannot really do that without being given multiple options that have multiple terms and conditions, whether it's non-refundable or has more flexible terms, and there's always different price points attached to each of those terms. Ultimately, we've got the same product at the end of the day. It's a seat on a plane that gets you from one place to another. But the airlines have a way in which we can change up the offering to help, you know, protect their own revenue and help protect give the guests more options. I feel like this is something that's very underutilized in the hotel world, which is you know, a little bit interesting considering you know, we are offering items that do perish overnight, much like a seat on a plane. So we should be really thinking about, you know, are we giving our guests the most amount of options? You know, are we making sure that if we have a hotel collect or an advance payment, we can offer better terms to our guests and in turn, you know, help secure ourselves more revenue or more flexibility around the way we generate revenue. So these are the sorts of things that we really want the technology to be providing to us, so that we have a little bit more control over the revenue strategy that we're obviously looking to goals that we're looking to reach.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Lucy, question for you. So a lot of properties are worried about, you know, adding a whole flight of channels onto their channel manager. Usually they want to keep it small. Was this a concern for you originally, and what actually was the outcome?
Yeah, I think by adding a lot of channels, just going off what Oscar said before, you know, having a lot more channels got us a lot more visibility, and then that just directed a lot of people back towards booking directly with us in the end. It did get us out there a bit more, coming from a country town, you know, it just gets us a bit more visibility going through a lot more channels. And yeah, going through SiteMinder, it definitely made it a lot easier to be able to do that.
Oscar, I guess you have a point about, you know, it creates that billboard effect, right?
Yeah, that's right. And Susie touched on this as well, right? I think the best practice is just giving ourselves every opportunity that we have at our disposal to promote and push our properties as much as we can, you know. And Eli, you mentioned, you know, using Meta, you know, that's really important. Google Hotels, we want to be able to sync our rates to that service too. You know, TripAdvisor and Trivago are also two really important Meta channels that can generate a lot of bookings. People have loyalty programs with any of these channels. You know, we have to be taking advantage of that. So everything needs to be considered in our view, and every opportunity is available to us. Yeah, the more we do it, then, you know, ideally that the more we really put ourselves on the map.
Absolutely. Perfect. So looking ahead, what's sort of one mindset shift or an operational change motels should be looking at to probably stay competitive this year?
Yeah, I think, you know, using an advanced distribution system, it definitely would increase your direct bookings and accommodation revenue. And yeah, it just makes it a lot easier for guests and easy to adjust your rates and promotions and drive, yeah, those direct bookings, and just giving you more control and, yeah, better results overall.
Yeah, I think for us a key shift is moving from distribution as a necessary cost to a controllable strategy. So you don't need to be everywhere, but you definitely need the right mix in there. And, you know, many performance issues aren't actually structural, they're execution errors, you know, older photos, mismatched inclusions or incorrect restrictions and that sort of thing. So consistent execution that's supported by the right connected systems is what will keep you competitive and not add to the complexity and management that's needed to look after it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just want to touch on that as well. We saw a lot of you know, retention on our booking engine and our websites after we did sort of like a cleanup of photos, a cleanup of information, like a real big refresh, you definitely see a lot more bookings coming through those platforms, especially when you're keeping it live, active. So it's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think just generally speaking, it's a really good. I mean, when we think about the entirety of the tech stack within a property, you know, we obviously have our PMS, we have distribution, we have maybe customer engagement platforms, back office accounting tools, door locking systems. You know, the amount of tech a hotel requires is often quite, extensive. And there are certain platforms I think are quite relevant in terms of, you pick something that you want to use for quite a long period of time. So PMS might be something that when you just make a decision on it, it is something you hope to use for maybe 3 to 5 years. I think on the distribution side of things, this is the thing that we really need to be scrutinizing more and more. You know, at least every 3 to 6 months, we need to be asking the questions, you know, is this the best booking engine for us? Are these the best channels that for us to list on? Are we doing everything we can, or are there anything that we haven't tried in order to ensure that we're getting the best results for the property? And, again, when you have flexibility and control and then you're in the driver's seat when it comes to the tech that you're using, it really enables you to do that and ask yourself those questions and use the insights that are available in the platforms to really just make decisions and decide on how to best go about things in future. So I think that's a really good way to make sure that you're staying competitive. Watching what everyone else is doing in town is obviously really important as well, but knowing full well that there is that there are other channels who are taking market share, who could potentially take market share away from you, is enough to sort of think, making sure that you're maximizing and optimizing everything that you're doing, day in, day out.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. If anyone isn't aware, towards the tail end of last year, Guestpoint and SiteMinder partnered up, and we've now got Guestpoint Elite as our sort of flagship premium or elite channel manager in this case. So it's really cool that we get to work very closely with SiteMinder to sort of be able to provide a lot of hotels and motels around Australia with sort of the best tech stack. So yeah, it's really awesome that we get to work with these guys.
Thanks, Eli. Hey, Susie, I think there was a question from the audience about Bookamotel. Are you able to maybe share some details for us as well?
Yeah, for sure. We've obviously recently come on board with Guestpoint. We've been using SiteMinder for a little while now for our partner motels. As far as we're aware, we are still Australia's only OTA that is focused exclusively for motels. It's the way we've travelled for a decade, and we found that it was a market that really wasn't prioritised by some of the other booking systems. And I think, as we've been saying, every OTA has their place. It's not one pushing out the other. It's finding that right balance, the right mix to get guests in your motels, and that's what we were really set up to do. So we are, I think, tomorrow finalising the launch of our connection with Guestpoint. So if you are a motel already on Guestpoint, then definitely reach out to us. We'd love to have you on board. Obviously, that then gives you the benefits of the SiteMinder connection now as well. So we're really looking forward to pushing the strength of the partnership between the three of us.
Awesome. So we have another question in here. Is there some way that showcases what channels are the best for a specific location?
Yeah, there is a way to look at that sort of thing. I mean, I think we can, as I mentioned, we have been able to break down the hotel booking trends by state. Which is obviously really good intel. But again, we also have to be conscious of with the difference between what's regional and what isn't. Because urban properties will obviously behave differently as per the size and the type and the category of property that is within that. So yeah, absolutely, it's really worthwhile having a look at these trends on an even more micro level to help us understand what is working in certain locations. But again, even within the platforms that we're using, if we are hosted on lots of different channels, then if the platforms are set up to sort of report on that, then that gives us intel as far as how everything's performing, right? Not necessarily just the channels, but also the rate plans, the room types, the source markets that we're drawing bookings from, you know, as we touched on earlier with the international travelers. So yeah, there's a lot that's actually available from within the platforms, from within the technology itself, that can help us understand more.
Awesome. I've got another one here as well. So if we're considering to move over to SiteMinder and utilize CTM Sleep Space, what sort of demographic of guests are we expecting? Is it corporate, long stay, workforce, government, or is it a mix of sort of all of those in one? So what's the real sort of takeaway from joining a platform like CTM Sleep Space?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, Eli. And you know, our experience, maybe Lucy can touch on this as well. But I mean, our experience with CTM is the fact that they have an exclusive agreement with the Australian government. So, if and when there are events in a certain location or a reason for people to come there, that you know, and drive federal government bookings, then CTM is obviously always looking for properties that they can connect to, so that they can have visibility on live inventory and those negotiated rates in hand. I mean, whilst they can still place bookings through GDS or perhaps through other corporate channels as well to properties, you know, what we really want is the negotiated rates to be direct. We want them to be visible. We want the guests to be sent to properties directly. And we also want, you know, a level of automation in terms of, you know, updating inventory in real time. You know, that's always really important when we're time poor hoteliers trying to run our operations day to day. So, yeah, very much the corporate travel is Travelers, Regional Australia, and then any government contracts that comes through is really useful as far as being connected with CTM.
Awesome. There's another question. Maybe Lucy, you could probably answer this one because you're dealing with this day to day. Do you find it difficult to manage all the different channels and OTAs, especially when it comes to like commission management and stuff like that?
Obviously going through SiteMinder, it definitely makes it a lot easier with commission management and things like that.
It's a bit daunting trying to, you know, connect to all these channels, but I think once you're on it, once you've set everything up through SiteMinder, it's definitely very, very manageable.
Yes, it is.
You know, you're on the latest API connections and stuff like that with SiteMinder. So everything's really up to date. Everything works really well. It's just obviously the initial stage of, you know, creating the OTA is probably the pain point for most people, I would say.
Yeah, like I said earlier, Eli, there's always that friction point around updating processes. You know, when you update technology, but again, if we're thinking about the long term and, you know, the revenue, then that's a real then the exercise is worthwhile.
Perfect. Yeah. And sorry, just touching back on the previous question. Also, the hard part with, you know, the OTAs, as someone mentioned in the Q&A, is the direct communication is the main concern. Obviously, this can be very OTA reliant. I know that with our message hub, we've put things in place to streamline this process a little bit better. For example, Booking.com is one of the ones where it used to be a bit of a complication to do guest messaging, but now there's settings that you can do to enable guest messaging to happen a bit more fluidly. So if you were to go on Booking.com, all you need to do is register your Guestpoint message hub email. We have guides on how to do this, and that will allow actually messaging directly from Guestpoint to your Booking.com customers. So yes, this is something that is a hurdle for some of the OTAs, but I think we're slowly sort of chiseling at resolving as much as we can from our end. So we've got another question here as well. So from a distribution standpoint, does Airbnb deliver the right guest types for motels? I feel it's better suited for full home inventory. How should operators evaluate its role in the channel strategy?
Yep, I can probably take that one as well. You know, I find that Airbnb obviously has very unique position in the market, but I also think that it really is very dependent on the location, right? And really dependent on the sort of rates that they're charging as well, because often, I know we talked about earlier about guests who will just naturally use OTAs as a starting point. I think more and more people are starting to use Airbnb as a starting point as well. And Airbnb have obviously a unique position in terms of being able to collect at the channel. So it's always worthwhile just popping in your location and just trying to have a look and see what kind of inventory there is available in Airbnb. I mean, I often find I put Airbnb locations into Airbnb and I see a lot of motels who list there anyway, just to make sure that they're not missing out, because the people are loyal to Airbnb and there isn't any home inventory or sort of vacation rentals available. We definitely want to make sure that our motels are there and hotels are there too. As I said earlier, I feel like that's what's happening in Tasmania, with it being such a high representation on our top booking channel list. So I think it's, more broadly just about having our ear to the ground and ears and eyes open and just making sure that we're not missing out on bookings that might not traditionally come to us. Maybe Lucy, as an operator, might have a bit to add on that as well. Do you find that, are you using Airbnb? Are you finding it's useful at all?
We don't use Airbnb. We use we use Booking.com, Expedia, CTM, and then there's GDS, and a lot of our travelers are actually corporate travelers. So we try and get channels that direct them to us. So
right, okay. Yeah. All good.
You got another question in here. I think this is directed towards you, Oscar. So you mentioned dynamic pricing. What are the most important things to consider in terms of building rate plans?
Yeah, great question. I mean, my view is that minimum 2, if not 3, for every room type that we're pushing out to an OTA or to a direct channel. At the very least, we want a refundable and a non-refundable rate, and have a variance between the two, because that's just how we obviously can capture revenue and ensure that there are sort of flexible terms for the guests, and so there is a consideration around how that's built. I mean, even occupancy-based pricing is a really valuable thing as well, and something a lot of properties miss considering. If there are extra people staying in each of these rooms, should we be adding, should we be charging for that? And the view is that, we probably should be, because we don't want to miss out on these revenue opportunities, right? So, absolutely. Non-refundable and refundable are always important. Minimum 2 rate plans are always very important as to begin with. But on top of that, we can also consider what's available at our property as well. Do we have a restaurant? Is there parking? Perhaps we have some added extras that we can include in the rate plans that we send to OTAs, and give guests more options. Try to build the experiences for the guests, because if that's available in the platform, and again, if we have the ability to control that, it makes our offering out in the competitive marketplace much more competitive.
All right, I can't see any other questions in the chat. I'm not sure. Mine just sort of collapsed on itself. I don't know if you can see anything else in there, Oscar.
I don't think so. I think that's it for questions, but yeah.
Okay, that's all right. All right, so I guess what we can do, as anyone else have anything they sort of feel is a good talking point, or that they want to drive to motels and hotels, and what we can sort of look at doing this year to improve your business. Maybe the advantages of joining platform like bookamotel.com.au.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages obviously is that we're quite targeted. We are a niche market, so for us personally, and why we developed the site is because we didn't want to trawl through all the other listings. We were very specific in the type of accommodation that we wanted. So it's really for those that aren't shopping around the market generally. They know what they want, they know where they're going, they know their dates, and they're quite specific, you know, with the type of trip they want to have. But that doesn't suit everybody. And so that's why you do need that broader market to make sure you are covering everybody and not losing potential visitors. So, you know, we're really proud of our platform, but we would never say, you know, don't list on another one, because you're going to miss out on other segments of the market. And I think that's probably one of the biggest, you know, takeaways from today is don't restrict yourself, you know, with what you're considering. And it doesn't mean you have to go out tomorrow and list on every OTA and overwhelm your staff and just everywhere, but just think a bit more broadly, think about the different, you know, segments of the market and how you might be able to reach them through those different platforms and work them into, you know, your strategy in the coming months.
Yeah, that I 100% agree. That's the way to go. Okay, so I think this will probably conclude today's webinar. I just want to say a big thank you to Oscar, Susie, and Lucy for jumping aboard and giving us an insight from different perspectives. It's really, really cool to hear. Yeah, and it's really good to see all that data there. Oscar, that was really awesome. Thank you for that. And a big thanks to everyone who did join in on the webinar today and ask questions, and anyone who's watching after this has been posted as well. Thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having us.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.